I'm glad to be here today. Thank you, April, for the introduction. And I'm going to read some poems. All right, there we go. All right, so I'm going to start with some poems from my MFA thesis, which is now a full manuscript on review or under review right now. So I'm really excited about that. And so this manuscript is called Cienfuegos. It's an attempt to reclaim my identity. Last year, I was talking with my grandmother on her birthday, and she revealed to me that we are the children of Cuban immigrants and also Nigerian immigrants. And so it allowed me to open up this world of possibility for what it means to exist in the spaces that I exist. Kind of living my whole life thinking one thing, thinking of myself as this monolithic being, and now I'm like not, and I'm not anyway, right now that I understand this, but so a lot of these poems are tapping into a history that I am still discovering, so I hope that you can see some of that in the poems. I'm going to start with a poem called Prologue. I thought a lot about film while writing these poems, and so maybe one day they'll be translated into film. September 1997. The old Walmart was 2 doors down from Kroger. Travel carnivals brought everyone together, lined us up like degenerates, like toys, exiled to the less desirable depository, but we were kings and queens that night, no matter the race or class. Grandma paid for my tickets and I ran over to the carousel lined with American muscle cars, autumn sun staining silhouettes out of stretched tarpon highway signs. I sat in the rustic yellow car, latched my seatbelt to the metal bar, placed over my bird chest by the ride master. A girl sat beside me, not white, not black, just brown. Lucia, my name is Lucia. Her voice was a smooth cinnamon cast over a bowl of hot oatmeal. Can I ride with you? I looked over at Grandma for her approval. Yes. Before the ride began, the girl kissed me on the cheek, and I, unable to express my immense joy, sat there, a little fire wrapped in clay, a black boy painted rouge and blue and brown for all the words I wouldn't say. Oh, you don't have to clap. That was a purposeful dramatic pause. I was going to the next poem. All right. This next poem is called Blood River. You will hear this title a few times during the reading. It is one piece woven across the entire manuscript. And this is the first part of Blood River. A name is more powerful than the body that contains it. Call it a miracle, an act of God, to be the embodiment of letters, combined to make meaningful the reasons for birth and breath. I know them well. Self-portrait as an obsidian boy. 0 to 7. Early 90s windbreaker, wrinkled suits, pink and blue and pastel hues, vouch for innocence, and each Oshkosh step is light and airy, non-threatening. Every other comment from a white shopper is either, look at those chubby cheeks, or she's so beautiful, although we're boys with long hair, including their cub's tail, hangs from our necks, the one lock we're allowed to have because any more would label us man-child dreadlocked warlocks. 8 to 13. Easily stimulated by the JCPenney photographer, the candy lady at church when she dressed up for Easter. and the casual Easter egg hunt, and the pastor's anniversary, and the girl you had a crush on your whole church life, but could never have because you wore the cloak of a pastor's grandson. Made it hard to stand up and walk around the collection plate. I only had $1 to give, so you placed it in the silver tray. Rubbed knuckles against red velvet at the bottom of the plate, the only softness you could touch. Being an obsidian boy clearly meant you'd have to know what you didn't know, without eating fruit from a garden guarded by flaming belts from her holy closet. 14 to 18. Genius in a teenager's body without the lab or the freedom. Called it smelling yourself to keep from showing the fear of what happens to a black man when he knew more than what his obsidian body was designed to retain. To hold in the fear of what happened to teenage boys who found joy in playing outside until streetlights came on and never made it inside. Until an electric chair called them home. When you left for college, you held onto the intellect that got you there, not knowing you'd need to adjust to the times. 19 to 26. Island girl infatuation metastasized into a full-blown lifestyle. A coincidence that you could be worthy of their time makes you wonder if you're one of them. Impossible. All the women you've loved in your life were black, even though your mother spoke fluent Spanish on recorded lines in a 5-story brick building across from the courthouse. One of the girls breaks your heart, the other trades yours for another, and the other lets it go too early. You've waxed numb, and like your heart, you've become locked in a box. The obsidian boy locked in a box with other obsidian boys. No one expects you to be weak, but no one wants you to be strong. You wonder how you were ever that special in the first place. During the day, you absorb the constant beckon of everyone who needs you. Night sneaks in, finds you, half alive inside the box where no one needs a hero. This next poem is called 4 Ways of Looking at a Spreading Fire. If you're here today, thank you very much. I'm glad you're here. 4 ways of looking at a spreading fire. The obsidian boy jumps across his bed from corner to corner in a blue mask and satin red cape. His LED sword slices San Jose air like warm bread at the panaderia down the street. At 3 years old, he saves the world, bellows with victory at monsters in his room, blinds the underside of his bed with green and yellow streaks from his plastic blade all before 6 o'clock dinner. Mahogany table, complete with matching chairs and placemats, his heroes sitting around the table with him, mom, dad, big mama, and family friends who speak more Spanish than they do. Incomplete. He looks around as if he's missing someone else, as if every cell in his body knows someone's warm body should fill the chair beside him. In 95, a black man and his son could walk golden streets, set ablaze in 5 o'clock shine, and shadows cooled to asphalt by 7:45. Wednesday, Jack-in-the-Box fries crunch between our teeth on the walk home, some 11 minutes away from the nearest air conditioner. I'm sure he made 11 a thing before it became household slang. He lifted me above his head, carried me on his shoulders until we arrived at a Bering parking lot and chain link fences laced with rust. My mother yelled from a block away, "Muévete." On my 13th birthday, my grandmother called the school. Hello? Yes. I'll be picking up my grandson early. When she pulled up, I opened the passenger side door, her face gray as spring clouds folding over each other to hide the sun. "Put your seatbelt on now," she'd fiercely mumble, a half beat after I sighed, trembling in our black Ford Expedition. The air crystallized between our two shoulders, cold as woe. It don't matter what happens next, you hear? You ain't gotta worry about him. My DNA was part of a man I never knew. I was supposed to be mad at him because they were mad at him, but how could I throw him away? I never held his hand, never shared a meal, never felt his warmth in threads of my blanket. We arrived at a building tucked away behind century-old trees, spring leaves thawed, dripping water broke the silence between our lips. Inside, the lab technician asks, blood draw or cheek swab. Lee was an active father, always did what a father does. Thursday, we walk into the Brisk Arena, our own winter cast in the middle of 85-degree weather, pucks floating around the ice-white rink, day-old Oreos and a lake of frozen milk, a San Jose Sharks jersey, too bulky for my 3-year-old frame, hangs in a treasured glass case, waits for hundreds of people, too busy to notice, to pass by. Welcome, glad you're here. Okay. So those first few poems are just like a bit of an opening, kind of like getting an idea of like the Obsidian Boy, which is like the blackness aspect, and now I'm going to read a few poems that kind of highlight a bit more of that reclamation of identity. We'll get there. All right. When my mother says she doesn't eat rice anymore, I often wonder if this will be our stable home. Not because it belongs to my grandmother's godmother, but because she no longer has to run from title loan companies that once came knocking on Saturday mornings right before she'd sit me down for breakfast in the living room with a Goofy movie, Jimmy Dean, with powdered eggs and Wonder Bread. She often recounts her experience with oatmeal. She calls it a "this all we got for now" meal, and paired with prune juice, a struggle meal for which she blames her decreased appetite whenever I offer to cook breakfast. On struggle days, rice carries the burden my mother would rather me not. Cienfuegos 1. Blackness. Hot air blowing fan, skin sticking to leather, a season that dies as quickly as it lives, seasoning chicken and pork steaks. Did you remember to pull up your pants? Food aroma beckoning from a half-mile away, a holy gown and purple house shoes. Oh, you know not to run from the chancla. Repoed Buick Skylark leaves the driveway. Golden trophies and a curio should cover the costs. She never let me pay for her mistakes. We ain't got it. Questions. Answers. Gotta get it for yourself. Questions. Answers. Leaving home with a Foot Locker and the clothes on my back, learning Spanish and only retaining ¿Qué significa? A question I could ask too many times and get the same response. This is Cienfuegos 2. Midas is what my mother calls me now whenever we talk about school on the phone. All right now, Midas, she'd say right before spilling the tea, raving on about the latest workman's comp claim. My mother is 57 years old, born in the veins of the Mississippi, to a musician who howls at the moon and an accountant who holds Britannica in the palm of her hand. Wisdom pours from her fountain, music and language from another time, probably from some story she holds on to from her grandmother's vine. Now, every time I stumble upon a garden or some hidden haven, I listen to the oak and fig and pine. Come, she says, press your ear to the sky. The stories are up there. Bless you. All right. All right, here we go. This poem is titled Dear Langston and Nicholas. So Langston Hughes and a Cuban poet named Nicholas Guillen often exchanged letters back in their time. And Nicholas Guillen was more like a political writer, but also a poet. And so this is my kind of a letter to the both of them, kind of in a way maybe thanking them for having had those communications, because then I was able to read them in my own research and grasp onto what it means to embrace all these parts of me. Your letters feel like an inheritance of which I am not worthy. This blackness is a stack of stories wrapped in cane stalks, and I have so many questions about the way my body whispers. how it cries and leaves, how it tries and cleaves to salt-rimmed shore, stains its pores with hot red dust. I was born, obsidian, and magma still churns in my core, but your words carry me across the gulf, douse me tenderly along the way, for wholeness to greet me at the bay. Softly grip my hands, kiss both my cheeks, and show me who I am, for I am ready to sing.
We'll just have to deal with our attention.
No, it's good. It's fine. No. So, this poem is called Blood Memory, and this was written after Monica Joe. If you've ever been to the Idle-Jorg Museum, Monica Joe is a culture bearer at Idle-Jorg, and we were talking about this reclamation of identity and the self, and she mentioned to me, well, you know, you have the blood of your ancestors in you, right? The things that that they might have done years past, right, still flow through you. So like, for example, I'm a musician, right? Somebody back then might have been a musician, or might have been a drummer, right, like I am, or might have been a vocalist like I am, or a poet, right? And so this poem is kind of like attempting to embrace like how awesome it is that like we carry so much legacy in the blood that still runs in us, right? So this is Blood Memory. I have fed the sky all the stars behind my eyes, watered soil in my backyard, plucked up dandelions just to see them return tenfold, planted my hands, hoping my fingers would gently soak up memories left behind by foot and knee for the earth to keep until my blood could muster courage to speak. This blood river wants me to know something. Josephine would have told me I am not a monolith, some one-dimensional being destined for only death, but a network of tributaries flowing into a larger body of water whose currents have no choice but to deliver me to a tangerine house and jazz blue door. Inside there is a letter, folded in half and yellowed from stale air. We are all learning who we are while teaching others to love who we will become. This blood river wants me to know something. Turmeric yellow was her favorite color. She wore a sunflower in her hair, and its earthy middle was more valuable than the emerald she wore on her earlobes. When I turn to look in the mirror, all I hear is the ocean singing. This blood river wants you to know something. This poem is called The Calabash Drum after Jose Marti. So in this manuscript, I am also reimagining the life of my great-great-grandparents who were Cuban immigrants. And their names were Henry and Josephine. And so in this manuscript, I'm like reimagining what they might have been like, the clothes they might have worn. So, and in this piece, I reference a very specific type of wardrobe, which is very important to Cuban culture. So, this is the calabash drum. A man with a white star in his straw hat has been turned away from the Union. He retreats to the stone path. Weary feet bruise and weaken pockets of dirt along the hollow corridor where he first planted a sunflower in her hair, fanning away bees in their chromatic hymns to have such a queen all to himself. Love happens in the street, standing in the dust. Twice a day for a month he begs for the highest paying labor. The railroad workers bend with laughter at a man so dark they'd make a track from his skin and stake his arms and legs with iron to make him stick. On the last attempt, he returns to the stone path, this time listening for cadence from the kicked stones. His wife meets him just before he arrives home, takes him by the cheek. The flower dies the day it is born, and the tree dies daily, just to bear more fruit. Once a week, he walks alone along the shoreline to a grove of calabash, hoping to discover the ones fallen from their sockets, buried beneath sand swept in from the sea. This time, one for the fishmonger's apprentice, one for Bimbe Sr., and one for himself. He saws the top halves of the gourds and hollows them. The apprentice will carry fish back to the market. Bimbe will paint and sell them as art, and the man with the straw hat stretches goat hide over the hollow calabash. Sundresses and button-down shirts gather for music in the plaza, surprised that only one man sits in the center, tapping the center of the hide with his finger and cupping the drum in his lap, rapping and tapping until hundreds of people come together under one sound, until the dust settles everyone's skin as equal. All right, maybe one more from here, and then I'll move on to the new manuscript I've been working on. The name of this poem is called Yo no puedo permanecer, after Joy Priest's Pegasus. The translation from that is, I cannot stay. Before I say bye until next time, I reach down and grab a handful of red dirt, sift it through my fingers into an empty mason jar, place it in my satchel beside the spiral shell I found near the pier. There, the water whispers to me, but only a couple of bubbles burst, spill words onto the shore, retreat to their currents. Sun washes across orchid sky and stars prepare to stay the night, so I sit. Still more time, whisper back, this time in my native tongue to see if it can hear little fires erupting inside, groans my spirit cries. A wave comes, forms a wall, paints me, black boy, rouge and blue and brown, stain the sand, fireflies blossom from invisible pockets in the brush, glow in unison with my pulse like a blaze in the woods. I reach my hand into the firefly flame, pull out an ember, swallow it whole, sweet in my throat, a wildfire in my lungs, like a scroll prophesying. Thank you. You can clap. I felt it. I was like, yeah. Okay. So I'm going to read a few poems from a new manuscript I've been working on, tentatively called "This Is How You Feel a Well." I've been thinking about how we heal ourselves and like how we, come to love ourselves more. And I think a lot of us could look at ourselves like a well that needs to be filled, right? So these poems attempt to do that. In different ways, not necessarily in like ways that you would think you'd fill up a person, like, in a positive way. There are other ways to go about doing that. So I'm going to start with confession. Let meditations of my mouth reduce to salt, season saliva on tides of my tongue, for waves of prayer to render me worthy, though stained, of the sacrifice I must make, unrepentantly on this altar, to draw from earth water, trapped in lungs of a star, assigned to my first stolen breath of moonrise and hurricane, whose winds whisper in comparison to prayers I well deep from holes in my bones, to be a well, to be made well. Trigger warning, this next poem references the airstrike in Gaza. So if I happen to step on your feet a little bit, just shake your foot off. On earth as it is in body, the last dream I had showed me a child, wrapped in charred makeshift tent rags, buried in a pit of smoke and sulfur, deep enough to stop groundwater, if there was any left, from filling hollowed bones back to breath. Case, weather get inclement, shots rain on the innocent. Lightning struck my bones back moments before the airstrike. She was 8 years old, filling her belly with stories from a gentle flame, and then shock waves roared their breath away. Tent rags covered everything but her eyes, tears petrified into amber from cinder rain. Every person on this rock looks like someone we'll love in heaven, even after the nightmare. Case, weather get inclement, shots rain on the innocent. Waking up is just another layer of the nightmare. Hospitals and encampments and safe zones harbor charred bodies beneath their wreckage until angels whisk the innocent back home to refuge among the stars. And it is not enough for them that the whole world witnesses life extinguished from bodies that resemble our own. Case, weather get inclement, shots rain on the innocent. That was also a bop poem, so there's like a refrain. I'm sure you caught on to that part. All right, I think I maybe have room for two more. It's 12:27. I'm going to use up all these 30 minutes. All right. So I spent some time at Princeton this summer teaching for a program. And the good thing about this is that I was an alum of the program I was teaching for. So being back there as an adult versus being there at 17 was very different. But I spent a lot of time listening to the trees because, well, you'll see it in the poem. The name of this poem is "When You're Ready to Have It Back, I'll Be Here Waiting." When the elder white ash bends to my will, it is not because it owes me some great debt. It is because we share the one thing that binds us to the cosmos. How strange it is for this body to expel graves from lungs and grow groves with carbon that falls to soil to feed its leaves. How strange it is for your body to expel breath from roots that live, to die, and live again. A more human heaven, and I, more like you, brown and still and memoried. You remember how many breaths I entrusted to you before leaving my childhood behind? Yes. Do you remember what I whispered to you in the wind the moment your tears soaked the cement beneath your feet? All right, last one, promise. Etched dark against the delta while sunset lingers after Gwendolyn Bennett. Feet dark as Wedgewood bury themselves in sod, mosquitoes prance on, skate shallow waters, drone on in unison with locusts and trees near the levee, cast spells at dusk and beg for a quick prick, but possess no reverence, dare I say, no holy hour for sun's somber leave from his most treasured sculpture. Surface of a black man's epidermis. Sacred tilled ground, separation of conscience from mutilation of body. Tissue of a black man's dermis, a soft soil bed where gardens grow starshine and marigold to feed and warm the skin to make it glow. Veins in a black man's hands, worth more than milk and honey, and nourishes rivers soothed only by fervent prayers of a grandmother. Blood in a black man's veins, God enough to tarnish ball and chain, cosmos enough to caravan memory and vision for mama's babies across an ocean whose sea foam is the only milk we have left from our mothers. Thank you.